Hello, I'm Mark Baer. Welcome to Muse. My guest this segment, Frank Priscaro, my friend, my golf partner, a branding expert, his company, 10,000 Feet. Let's begin a little bit about what you do, what a branding expert, a branding consultant does.
I try to help companies get their story straight. And it's really important to have a good story. My clients fall into two categories. Basically, they're either startup companies who have built something that they don't know how to talk about yet and perhaps nobody's ever seen before, or companies who are trying to reinvent themselves. So my work is really centered around trying to articulate why what they do is important, why someone should give them money for what they've built, and what sort of a future they're going to have and create in their marketplace.
So just as an aside here, you studied literature, you studied writing, so just to go that this education does have some value in the world, and it does come down to, story is important.
Yeah, I suppose there is a place for English majors in this world.
Yeah, which is something that...
It's heartening,
Yeah, it is a bit heartening. So again, at the Museum of Monterey, one of the things that we've been trying to tell about our story is that what we do here is to tell stories. We have exhibits, we have other events and such like, but the new mission that we've established since we reopened 4 years ago in 2011 was to tell the stories of Greater Monterey, and then again with an emphasis on history, arts, innovation, and maritime heritage. One of the things that I don't tell enough here, and have been having a harder time getting across, is what that innovation piece looks like. And innovation is just an amazing story to me, and you've been in your role, you've had a chance to have some front row seats at some really interesting places. And let's expound on that a little bit.
In my 35 or so year career in Silicon Valley, I've seen these sort of giant technology companies when they were sort of just starting out. Adobe, Intel in the early 80s, Xilinx, Sun Microsystems, a bunch of others. And what I've seen about innovation is that the first thing is that it's really messy. It's very hard to control, and I think in business today, one of the things that companies struggle with is that, well, how do we be more innovative? How do we, and they go to great and sometimes ridiculous lengths to try to get to try to be more creative and more innovative with their approach to what they do, and it's just hard.
So one of the things we discussed yesterday is within the creative process, the innovative process, that companies end up going places they didn't expect to go, and they end up having a product or an idea or a story they didn't expect to have. Yeah, and what happens at that point?
Well, exactly. I mean, I've never seen, in all that time, I've never seen a company who had developed a new product actually go to market with the first iteration of that product. It's kind of like the first pancake. Yeah. You have to make it, but nobody wants to eat it. Right? You just have to sort of throw that out. For example, the two guys that started Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, were at Stanford, and they had built a search algorithm, which they were trying to get some money for. And they offered that search algorithm to Yahoo for like $20 million. And Yahoo turned them down, okay, because it was kind of like, well, who needs that? But if you sort of step back from that and sort of look at the bigger picture, and this is why it's sort of why I think innovations, true innovations and innovators are so valuable, is because they do change the landscape. When they do something that really works, it changes how we think about things. It sometimes goes to the very root of our culture. The thing that people didn't understand, the thing that the people at Yahoo didn't understand about what Bryn and Paige had built was that if we're going to digitize everything, and we started with our numbers and our words and our videos, and you can even digitize yourself now on, if we're going to do that, how are you going to find anything? It's not like I have a glass of water, I put it down on this couch, I walk out of the room, I come back, and it's here. In cyberspace, where is that stuff? So what these guys built was tremendously valuable, but because it was so, such a far-reaching change and was going to affect the culture in really some profound ways, those things are really hard to see.
So how do you recognize it? Okay, so you've got something and you almost see a future, but there's technologies, there's pieces, there's maybe the historical moment isn't right, the financial moment isn't right, whatever. How do you see that you have something or you don't have something, and what's the difference in that?
I worked with a company in the late '90s and 2000 that was probably one of Silicon Valley's most expensive and spectacular failures. It was a company called Transmeta, and they built one of the products that they built. They were building low power microprocessors, and one of the products that they built was a tablet, that you could surf the web with, and it was a colossal flop, okay, because it just was not, we just weren't ready for that. There wasn't enough bandwidth to deliver it. There weren't enough websites to surf, and so it was a nice idea. It was 22 or 3 years too early. So it's hard to tell, sort of when you've, sort of hit the hit the jackpot with something like that, because one of the things that that people don't understand about innovation is that you just have to try a lot of things. You have to fail a lot, and people think you just sort of reach in your pocket and pull something out, and it's like, woohoo, that's a new thing, and everybody loves it, and that's absolutely not the way it is at all. There's a famous story about Thomas Edison building the light bulb and building hundreds of iterations of that. And the engineer in his lab who solved the problem of which metal to use in that filament, right? He decided that, the tungsten might work. Edison said later that if this guy had been a metallurgist, he would have known not to do that.
Right.
Right? So he would have known that never would have worked. So it's things like that the accidents that happen, unintended consequences. This case where if Google had sold that algorithm to Yahoo, we would have never heard, that company never would have been started. That just simply wouldn't have existed. So the history of innovation is, I think like the history of mankind is full of accidents and near misses and serendipitous.
When you counsel companies, do you let them know to be aware of serendipity, to be aware of chance, to be open to accident?
Well, if they're not, we're all in trouble, right? Yeah. Because they just the way they go about their businesses, if they've been in business for more than 20 minutes, they have come, I'm sure face to face with the fact that things are not going to go as planned.
Right.
So, they just, I think resilience, besides creativity and the ability to have some vision about how things could be, is one of the most important qualities for entrepreneurs. It's if you can't get up and dust yourself off, 100 times a day, you're not going to make it. It's as simple as that.
Well, again, coming back to the museum here and trying to tell our story and tell the public that we're about storytelling and repeating it and trying to become something new that people understand and trying to repeat the message over and over, that is sometimes a little difficult to hear, and it's been a really interesting challenge. But what I want to get to here is the importance of what a museum provides a community, and you have a unique story of growing up and where a museum played a huge importance in your life?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there was a program at the Carnegie Museum of Art there that's still going on. It's in fact it's an 80-year-old program. It was started at the end of the Depression, and they take a couple of kids out of every school in the city, and they run scholarship contest. You design a poster, and whoever wins, take the top 3 or 5 or whatever. But these classes are, it's really interesting. They ran every Saturday during the summer, and Tuesdays and Thursdays during the summer, and every Saturday during the school year. And it was sort of in those days, it was, before parents were used to running their kids, all over town to do 18 different things. That was really sort of a hardship to, get the kids there. But it was, nobody would think of dropping out. Nobody would, once you got into the program, you went there, for weeks and weeks, and in my case, I went there for 4 years, and it was just a life-changing experience for me, because after the art class was over, I got to spend, the rest of the day in one of the best museums in the world to see, art and science and history, and it was a remarkable sort of adjunct to my education, and in some ways, I sort of look back on things, I would have to point to that as my education, because I got sort of more varieties of subjects and a different sort of class of content than anybody could have possibly gotten in a regular grade school. So it was a remarkable experience, and I think that we're so concerned these days about creativity, and creativity is really, really hard to teach. In fact, I'm not sure that it can be taught. But what can happen, I think, is when you expose people to things that have been created, art and stories about history and science and things like that, it engenders something that is akin to inspiration. So. And I think that's the most important thing that museums can provide. They're not sort of dusty places where there isn't sort of anything there that has relevance. Everything there is relevant, and in some way can provide some inspiration for people.
What we are trying to do here, which brings us back to story, is use the objects that we have as totems to tell a story. Right. The story is important. The object is just the magical totem, and so that's how we're trying to turn. This is what we'd like to. This is what our aspiration is here. And if we can do that, and if the community, we invite anyone in the community to come in here and get involved with this, then I feel we'll achieve something.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I mean, these objects here, these totems are really like like a good first sentence in a great book.
That's right.
It's just the beginning. It's kind of a jumping off point, and there's nothing but discovery after that. And I think that process of discovery is what's so inspiring.
You've given me my the orders to go. So Frank Priscaro, 10,000 feet branding. A pleasure, man.
Thanks very much, Mark. Really enjoyed it.